In today's society, millennials get a pretty bad rap. Today, we talk to a man's man for the millennial age about political correctness on the Fat Man's Guide podcast. Interview 2, Josh Herzog. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. Before we talk to our guest, I again want to thank you all for listening. Please like, subscribe, and share. And if you get a chance, go to iTunes and write a review. And if you would be so nice, please give me 5 stars. And remember, you can also follow me on Instagram at the_fatmans_guide. Today's guest is Josh Herzog. As I said, a millennial's man's man. Today, we had a conversation about one of the millennial generation's favorite topics, political correctness. And we did this while talking about something that we both love, comedy. We're here with Josh Herzog, a world traveler, if you will. Josh used to be in school, and I taught him. And not going to lie to you, I kind of whooped his ass in Tecmo Super Bowl one time. And coached him in football, and he's one of the funniest guys that I know. I could talk to Josh about anything, and I figured today I just wanted to sit down and have a BS session with someone I think highly of. Josh, welcome onto the podcast, man. You're gonna be the second interview.
Thanks, Coach. It's good to be here.
Awesome.
Hold you in high esteem as well, so I'm excited to do it.
That's sweet. And we were kind of talking before we got into the episode here that the difficulties of trying to do stuff online. It's mentioning the fact that last week I struggled with my volume, so I had my IT guy, my 15-year-old son, trying to help me with this microphone. And at the same time, Josh is trying to record this on his phone, and he's like, it's crooked and cockeyed and everything else. But when we were talking before we started, and I think we'll continue with this, Josh, is we were talking about like stuff we've been doing with COVID-19 and kind of trying to fill our days. And one of the I know you love comedy, and you were talking about you're trying to listen to a lot of different comedy things. Netflix got a bunch of stuff, everything else. So tell me, what are some of the awesome comedy things maybe you've seen during the break and things that get you thinking?
One of the ones that got me thinking the most was this guy, I believe his first name's James Acaster. He has a 4-part, which is kind of a new thing too. It's a cohesive 4-part episode that's like kind of a whole series of a stand-up. So, and that's pretty cool. He kind of takes on different roles in it. But, I mean, the whole thing has to be cohesive enough for that to work, and he does a really good job with that. So that's what I recommend watching a lot.
That's awesome.
And then another one.
Did you sadly watch Tiger King?
I did. I had to give in to the hype. Watch it. It was, just what a collection of terrible, terrible people for the most part. But that makes great TV. Everyone likes to see everyone slows down for the dumpster fires.
Oh, absolutely. So. Everyone loves a dumpster fire. There is no doubt. Like, they had to know when they started filming, they're like, holy crap, we've hit gold. People are going to love this crap. It's kind of funny because, everyone kind of gets wrapped up in that stuff. And you don't even know if you want to laugh at it or you want to cry or, if you want to call CPS or what you want to do, those poor tigers. But you're absolutely right. I think I related it to a train accident. It was just terrible. Like every episode's like, oh my goodness, what's the next episode going to be? And kind of looking at all the stuff that Netflix puts on there. And again, you being a comedy person, I know when I watch a bunch of comedy, a couple of the guys I like to watch are like, Bill Burr and Joe Rogan, and some of these guys. I know when we were talking earlier, you mentioned, Jim Jeffries and,
yeah.
And obviously hilarious comedians, but they get a lot of grief right now because of kind of this political correctness culture or cult. Maybe I want to say cult. Yeah. Myself personally, I want to call it a cult. And I know some people are going to think, "Oh, you're a terrible human being." No, I'm not saying I'm a terrible human being. What I'm saying is guys know when a joke is. Do you think that comedy has changed a little bit? Do you think comedy has to be careful what it does nowadays when you're watching some of these comedians?
I mean, the climate's definitely shifted that way for sure with the skewering of social media that you'll get from all of the, the Karens out there and
The Karens, I like that.
and then again, I make a social media reference myself. It just shows how pervasive that is. But yeah, I mean, everyone's afraid of getting skewered. I mean, it just can kind of tear people's careers apart. At least from my, perspective. Who knows? But yeah, everyone's walking on eggshells for the most part. But then, like you said, there are some people who are, trying not to let it, change their style of comedy.
Oh, yeah, and I think that you're absolutely right. I think that social media is, and it's not just comedy; it's everything. I mean, how many
Mhm.
people? If you were to go back 10 years ago, right? I think about when you guys, because God, you guys were, I think, graduated from high school 10 years ago. Oh, I'm so old. But 10 years ago when you guys were graduating, I mean, can you imagine social media having the power back then that it does today? I mean, I look back to 25 years ago when I was in high school and graduating, and I'm sitting here going, the crap that people in my generation would have gotten in trouble for. I mean, it would have been ridiculous when you see some of the commentaries and stuff that happens like that. And of course, a lot of comedians, I was mentioning to you before that like Jerry Seinfeld and Chris Rock, two great comedians. These are guys that made their careers, traveling to colleges and making money off of, 20-year-olds who thought everything was hilarious. That now they don't even do colleges anymore, because it's not worth the risk. Because again, like you said, they're gonna get skewered on social media. But you do have these guys right now, like I mentioned, like Bill Burr. If you ever seen his episode or his shows, he purposely goes out there and says, "I'm going to offend you. I am going to do everything in my power to offend you tonight." And it's almost like he said, "To hell with political correctness, and I am going to say the most terrible, offensive things imaginable." Who was that one guy you were talking about that you liked? That I know I like. Was it
Anthony Jeselnik?
Yeah. He's
really
one of
goes
those
for shock
guys.
value than those.
Yeah, he's one of those guys. He is someone who will just say, and he says it so deadpan too. Like you actually don't even know if he's a monster, a terrible human being, or he
Like,
literally thinks it's funny.
It.
Yeah, I mean, so I think one of the questions that we would have, for a lot of people, and maybe the society as a whole, does the viewer? Do you think the viewer kind of has to have a little responsibility in if you're going to go watch a comedian? Shouldn't you understand who you're getting into and maybe have an idea that you may be offended by this person? And go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say just absolutely. You have to understand, like, that's part of what their, platform is. It's one of the rare things, just not to quote, to paraphrase, in Dave Chappelle's recent Mark Twain Award ceremony and what was, made in that series or documentary that they put on Netflix there. It's kind of something that it's one of the few things where they expect to be able to kind of say whatever they want because it's supposed to be taken with a light heart to a degree. But I also think it's kind of nice in the fact that, I don't know, you kind of have to be able to take a joke to give a joke. So it's like they're kind of bringing themselves up to, kind of intense criticism. But yeah, I think that the viewer has to understand what they're getting in for. Otherwise, it's kind of just almost like censorship in itself. If a comedian's worried about what they're saying, what their audience kind of takes from it. I don't know. A little bit.
Yeah, well, and I think that's one of the really difficult things too. Is you mentioned Dave Chappelle, who is another one of those guys who just he's gonna lay it on the line what he wants to say, because it's kind of like that question of what is offensive, right? And everyone's got a different perspective. I mean, you and I might be able to sit here and tell jokes that some people would go, that is disgusting and disturbing. But there is an entire segment of the people who, I mean, for myself personally, if I'm in a difficult situation, I know I crack jokes. If I'm in a tough situation, I will say things as a joke that some people will think are very offensive. But to me, that's how I deal with my own stress. Like if you had a family member who died or something like that, there are going to be some people who are going to be crying. There's going to be some people that are just going to kind of joke, and it's one of those things where people have to understand, who it's coming from. If you go to a comedy show and you're listening to one of these guys, I go back to, people like Richard Pryor. one of the great comedians who could not pretend to put a show on today. George Carlin probably couldn't pretend to put a show on today, And you got guys like Jerry Seinfeld. I mean, Jerry Seinfeld's he's not a dark comedian. You know what I mean? Like yeah, Chris Rock can be a little colorful. But and what's really awful about it is I was thinking before we got together and thinking about, kind of talking about this, the only comedian I could think of that I listened to as a kid who was just clean, like totally clean and funny, was Bill Cosby. And I used to always use Bill Cosby as my example, but what do I do now? It's like, Bill Cosby's hilarious, and nobody's going to laugh at that anymore.
No, that's a joke in itself.
Yeah, that's exactly that. And, a dark joke, by the way, because now you could take so many of his skits that he did, and you could turn them so bad, and people go, that's not right. What about I know there's victims. But at the same time, where is the line? And I think that's where a lot of comedians are really struggling. And I think all of us, when we're in our own little social groups and we crack a joke, and like I said, I know you're always cracking jokes. It's always careful who's your mixed company, right? Because you don't want to offend someone. But yeah, like I said, I think that, and then of course, where's too far? I asked you earlier, and some of the people listening might know who Artie Shafir is. You mentioned that you didn't know who Artie Shafir was, and for those who don't know, Artie Shafir is he's a very funny comedian, very dark, and one of the things that he does in a lot of his shticks is if there's a famous person who dies who was a dirtbag, he rips them viciously postmortem, all right, or mortem, sorry, postmortem. And do you think that that's funny? Does it depend? He got in trouble because he's been doing it for years. But 2 months ago, he did it to Kobe Bryant. And everyone loves Kobe, and he got ripped apart. Do you think that goes too far, or do you think it kind of depends?
I think it kind of depends. I mean, once someone dies, especially someone who's, celebrity status, everyone automatically just thinks of all the great things that they did with the group, like, remembered for. But, like you had kind of said that already hit on when he was making fun of him, that like he was, an accused rapist, so it's something that shouldn't be swept under the rug by any means. But at the same time, should you take the timing into account? Did he possibly do a publicity stunt that probably worked fantastically because people are talking about it? We're talking about it right now. Mm-hmm. I don't know, but I don't think it's necessarily, an absolutely terrible thing to do to say something like that, especially if you're in comedy, because it's, like I said earlier, it's one of the platforms that you should be able to kind of speak your mind to everyone. You're up there to tell jokes. Like, if you're not taking that into account from the audience, you're in the wrong place.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too is that when you look at someone like Kobe Bryant, again, in the media and everything else, the problem I think Artie did was he did it 8 days after the helicopter crash. I don't even know that they were in the ground yet. Like you said, timing's probably a real big key. If you're doing that next fall, you know what I mean? People might not freak out as much. But it definitely makes for a difficult situation if you're going to have that. But you know what? Again, that's something that he's always done. That's his comedy routine. If you're going to go and listen to someone and I don't even know if you remember Jeff Foxworthy or not, but Jeff Foxworthy, when I was a kid, he was the redneck, comedian. And every joke was about people dating their cousins and writing, their sister, covering their sister's name up on the water tower because someone wrote something terrible. It was redneck humor. It was funny, but I'm sure someone took offense to it. There's got to be someone who took offense to that. And if they did, shouldn't they understand that when you have a comedian like that, that's what you're going to walk into, And I think that a lot of people don't necessarily understand that. So, hey, before I let you go, because I know we talked a little bit about, political correctness and everything else. Obviously, I see you wearing that awful Cowboys jersey. Yeah, obviously. All the love because you have the pride to wear it. So we got the draft tonight. That's why you got to make sure we get you done before it's time to eat nachos and wait, 25 minutes for a draft pick to come in. Obviously, my team already made their draft pick. We drafted Stephon Diggs there from Minnesota. So where do you think your Cowboys are going?
Well, they definitely need some help on the edge, on the other side of Demarcus Lawrence there. A lot of kind of like the low key pickup that they had was Gerald McCoy there in the middle. So that's going to, kind of attract a lot more double teams. But I think that their most glaring need is going to be a defensive back who's good in coverage. I think that the Jeff Okudah sweepstakes, barring a ridiculous trade where they probably give up more than they'd need, would be probably out of the question. Kind of hoping that CJ Henderson drops down to him, the second-ranked corner. But who really knows? There's so much prospective trades that happen during all this. One of the biggest factors going into the draft, I think, is that there have not been near as many team meetings, no face-to-face stuff with all the lockdown precautions and stuff. So a lot of teams don't know as much of what they're getting, I feel. But I'm really excited to see how it shakes out. But I definitely would hope to see either an edge rusher or a coverage defensive back.
Yeah, and you're 100% right. The lack of being able to communicate and talk to each other means we sadly have to pretend to care about the Wonderlic score more, and sit there and talk about
fake numbers.
Exactly, whether or not whatever his name, Tug Tua, whatever, whether his 19 is good enough. I'm like, he's not Russell's 5. What was that? What was that guy's name from the Raiders?
Oh, Jamarcus Russell.
Jamarcus Russell and his 5.
They gave him 5.
Holy smokes! Yeah, I'll tell you what, that's terrible. You know what? That Tug dude can throw a football. So you know what? I mean, if they want to let him drop down to the 20th pick, I'm sure someone down there, Bill Belichick, someone would love to be able to make that pick. All right. Hey, you know what? It was awesome having you on, Josh. I really appreciate it. Hopefully we can get you back on here in the future and just BS. Like I said, I just, like having a great opportunity to just sit down and talk to you. And maybe the next time we do, we might be in a situation where we can do this face-to-face instead of trying to figure out your cell phone.
Yeah. Yep. That was a blast being on here. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks a lot. We'll see you.
Well, guys, thanks for being here, and thank you for being on, Josh. I look forward to getting you back on here soon. Again, like, subscribe, and share the podcast. Leave a comment, and check us out on iTunes. And we'd love if you went and left a comment and a review, and like I said, give us 5 stars. And, of course, you can also find us on Podbean and on Instagram. And at Instagram, that's at _Fatmans_guide. Until next time, be safe and live life to the fullest without excuses, even in crazy times like these. See ya.